Is the NHL considering making changes to their draft lottery process and the odds for team getting the first overall pick at the NHL draft? Today we're going to review information out by Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic discussing that possibility, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned today, I want to talk about the NHL Draft Lottery and the possibility that we see changes to how it all works before the next NHL Draft. Now, of course, as we've talked about a few weeks ago, there is doubt that the 2021 NHL Draft will take place at its normally scheduled time. Of course, we already have a schedule of events right now for the NHL for the next little while here to get us through to the beginning of next season. But there is a chance that the 2021 draft might get postponed either to the winter or all the way to 2022, where they might have two separate drafts for each draft class of players, just to give the opportunity for more of those players and prospects to have a chance to play. With a lot of the lower level leagues not playing or having very limited action, many NHL GMs feel like it might be best to hold off to give teams more of a chance to scout and those players more of a chance to show their skill set before they actually get drafted. So there is a real possibility that can happen. And if that does happen, it very well might give the NHL a little bit more time to give thought and consideration to how they're going to handle the draft lottery here moving forward. Now, what spawned a lot of this conversation was the fact that the Detroit Red Wings were the last overall team this past season, and they were last by a fair margin. It's certainly clear that the Detroit Red Wings were not a team that was tanking, and yet they only got 4th overall in the NHL draft. The way everything is weighted, it's certainly not the really high odds for the worst team to get the first overall pick. Now, over the years, the NHL Draft Lottery has been changed on a number of occasions. They're trying to discourage teams from tanking on purpose to finish last to get the first overall pick. So that's part of the problem. And at the same time, they want to make it interesting from an entertainment standpoint, in my opinion, as well, so that teams that are not necessarily right at the bottom do have a shot at moving up. Like I said, we've seen different formats over the years, but right now, if you're a non-playoff team, there's a possibility you could still pick first overall. I mean, we've seen teams that were ranked, that were scheduled to pick 12, 13, 14, actually move up either all the way to 1 or 2 or 3 and get one of those top 3 spots. And, it's many teams feel it's not really fair. Now, I understand in a way like why it's weighted that way. Obviously, the lower you are in the standings, the odds are adjusted. But they've changed the odds so many times that if you're in a position based on standings to have a top 3 selection, the odds are actually against you to retain that and move down. Now, so there's looking at several different options, but I do think it's fair to say that Steve Yzerman of the Red Wings was probably one of the people that are possibly responsible for getting the conversation going on this again after being frustrated by how his team made out at this year's draft lottery process. Like I said, it's clear that the Red Wings weren't tanking. They were last. They were last by a good margin in picking 4th overall. This seems to defeat the purpose of what this is meant to do. The best players in the draft are meant to go to the teams that are struggling the most and need it. And right now, like in the last number of years especially, I think it's fair to say that we don't really have teams that are obviously tanking. The last real example, in my opinion, of teams tanking on purpose was in the McDavid draft when he saw the Buffalo Sabres and the Edmonton Oilers kind of battling it out for last place. And obviously, they ended up getting Eichel. The Buffalo did. Edmonton got McDavid. But, the Sabres really were a team especially that were looking for sure that they were tanking intentionally. So the league does not want that, which I understand and obviously agree with wholeheartedly here. Now, just to give you a little bit of context here as well, just to kind of show you how the draft lottery has gone into history, if you look all the way back since 2011, we've only had 2 different occasions where the team that was ranked last ended up picking first overall. So that's twice in a decade. So that's 20% of the time here that the team that was last actually got to pick first. So that gives you the 2016 Toronto Maple Leafs, who were last in the NHL, and they picked Austin Matthews. And then the 2018 Buffalo Sabres, where they picked Rasmus Dahlin. They were able to hold on to their first overall picks, and everybody else in those years between them and ahead of them have lost first overall because of the draft lottery and moved down at least a few spots here. So as you can see as well, and I'll put up a graphic here to kind of show you and demonstrate my point, we've also seen cases where we've had teams that were ranked really low. Like, as a non-playoff team, move all the way up into the top 3, because for the last number of years now, the top 3 spots were all available in the lottery. At one point years back, it was just first overall that was in there. Then they started doing the top 3, which has changed things here quite a bit as well. But as you can see here, back, for example, in 2020, just last year, we had the Chicago Blackhawks that were the 12th ranked team going into the draft lottery. So they had the 12th best odds of getting first, but they got to go all the way up to number 3. They moved up 9 spots. That's really substantial. They got Kirby Dach out of that as the NHL draft, and he turned out to be a very, very important player for them. So that's incredibly lucky that way. In 2018, we had a case where the Carolina Hurricanes went from number 11 all the way up to number 2. That's when they were able to get Andrei Svechnikov, so that was huge luck for them. And of course, he's turned out to be a huge player for them as well. And then in 2017, we had the Philadelphia Flyers move all the way up from number 13 all the way up to number 2 there as well, where they get Nolan Patrick. So again, some pretty drastic changes. Now, of course, the teams that are ranked that low, they're not all that far out from making the playoffs. Many would feel, and I would agree, that they don't really need or deserve to have a pick that high. Now, could they move up some of the draft by winning the lottery? That's a possibility. Now, one thing that's being looked at is that maybe they change the rules that the most you can move up is 3 spots. And if that's the case, then there's a very limited number of teams that could get first overall. Not only the top 3 teams that are, in the lottery per se, but the 4th ranked team would have a shot to go from 4 to 1, but that would be it. So you'd only have the bottom 4 teams able to go to the first overall. If you're number 10 or 11, 12, you can only move up so many spots. You still get to move up higher in the draft, but at the same time, you're not taking away from the bottom teams. Now, another scenario they're looking at as well is adjusting the odds here once again, so that the odds are weighted a little bit more heavily, so that the teams that are in those bottom 3 spots based on the standings, that they have higher chance of retaining and winning those lottery picks to stay where they finish based on standings as well. So we could see a scenario where that the actual rules themselves don't change, but the odds do, to give them a better chance. And there's also talk as well that they could put in some sort of rule that you can only pick top 3. Maybe you can't do it like every other year or something like that. Once you pick top 3, the following year you can't. Or there could also be a rule that maybe based on a certain time frame that you can only pick first overall so many times. Of course, that was another concern as well. If you look back at the Edmonton Oilers, they had the first overall pick a long time. Like, yes, they were rebuilding there, but they took a long time to come out of that rebuild to become a little bit more competitive. Like, they were, a bad team for a long stretch there. And the NHL, at the beginning of things, yes, you want to hopefully help them get a high pick and start moving them forward. But after so many years of not really improving, the league just can't help you anymore by continuing to give you those top selections. But I mean, we've seen them have not only McDavid, Nugent Hopkins was first overall. They wasted one on Neil Yakupov. They had Taylor Hall at one point as well. They had a lot of first overall picks. And obviously we want to make sure that doesn't happen again, because I know a lot of teams are also frustrated about that. I mean, it was a running joke there at one point that if the Oilers missed the playoffs, they were getting first overall. And it happened a lot. So there could be some other rules that we see implemented as well to kind of make sure that you don't want to, you're trying to balance out tanking, but at the same time helping those teams that really need it. Like, you can look at Detroit, you can look at Ottawa the last few years. They were not tanking. They were just really bad teams going through rebuilds and really could use the benefit of getting the top young players that are available to them. So certainly, I think changes are likely going to be made. What exactly they are, it's difficult to say. These are all the options right now that are on the table, and I wanted to present that here to you. I know this has been something that has been out. I'm from Pierre LeBrun now in the Athletic for probably the last number of days. It's something I've been meaning to talk about for the last 4 or 5 days here. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but it's something that I think needs to change. I am for change on this. I'm not really sure exactly what is best, but some kind of compromise to make sure that those teams that really need those top 3 spots get them the most. So let me know what you think down below. What's the best way that you can change this format so that the teams that need the picks get them, but at the same time, you really discourage tanking as well? And we'll discuss further down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.